Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Weiyu Wang. I was born in Shandong Province, China, 1973. In 1996, I got my bachelor's degree and was recommended to pursue a doctorate at Tsinghua University. The next year, I started practicing Falun Gong. After I entered Tsinghua, I knew about the practice because Falun Gong meditation had been freely and openly practiced in all parks, communities, and schools for years. There were crowds of Falun Gong practitioners meditating peacefully in public spaces every single day. So in January 1997, during the first semester of my doctorate program, when I saw the book of Falun Gong, I immediately picked it up. The book's contents discuss the moral principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, an idea so attractive that I could not help but finish reading it in a few hours. I deeply realized that this is what I want. This is how people should live. To be a good person is determined by human nature inside. And to deviate from this principle is actually to betray one's own soul. And hundreds of people on campus welcomed me to realize this wish for spirituality. As far as I recall, there were 11 total groups of practitioners with more than 500 students and teachers meditating daily at Tsinghua. But ever since the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, led by Jiang Zemin, carried out the severe persecution of Falun Gong in mainland China from 1999, my family and I experienced oppression and torture for 14 years. I was forced to suspend my schooling twice and give up my doctorate degree due to this wide-scale persecution. For nearly a decade, I was jailed and brutally tortured in prison by CCP authorities in Tianjin. I was sentenced at age 29 and lost my 30s due to the crackdown on religion. Even after my release, I was closely monitored by police and CCP agents. In the fall semester of '99, the CCP deputy secretary of my department at Tsinghua asked my classmates to condemn me one by one in a classroom for more than 2 hours. This was a familiar classroom filled with familiar faces, and I was suddenly brought to stand before dozens of them, defenseless and forced to listen. I still cannot forget the face of my close friend, who stood up and threatened me. If you keep your belief in Falun Gong, I will stab you to death. I was very astonished at that time. I had no idea that propaganda could change a person in such a dramatic way. In August 2002, after I was expelled from the university on the grounds of my spirituality, I was just walking down the street when I was suddenly thrown onto the ground by a group of strangers. They knocked my glasses off my face and then stepped on my head. This violence surprised the passers-by, and some of them stopped and watched. The assailants told the pedestrians that I was a thief. I shouted back, I'm a Falun Gong practitioner, not a thief. They were so scared at my words, they quickly covered my mouth and stuffed me into a car. Then they drew me to a secret place that was especially made for detaining Falun Gong practitioners, called the Legal Training Center. There, I was beaten and electric shocked endlessly from 6 p.m. to 5 a.m. the next day. The so-called trainers would shock my neck while grinning with electric batons continuously until the batons ran out of power. Then they plugged electric batons directly into the sockets and continued to electrocute me. I was shocked all over my body, including all 10 fingertips, and they even pierced 2 electrodes into my back. The authorities would jump to smash my head with their elbows, called me a counter-revolutionist, and shouted with glee to scorch every inch of skin. During the next 6 months, they locked me in solitary confinement, and almost everything was forbidden, including talking, knowing the date or time, or even using the toilet. Going to the restroom required an application, But those requests were nearly all denied. Also, I was kidnapped in the summer with only the clothes on my body. So in the winter, I had to hug my legs tightly to resist the coldest days of Beijing. The severe living conditions led to muscle atrophy. Every night, I fell asleep to the sharp sound of whiplashes and the horrible shrieks of women being tortured. During this period, my parents were not allowed to know my condition or my location. And these horrible days were not even regarded as a term of detention by the CCP government. Next, I was sent into Fengtai and Chaoyang detention center in Beijing. These centers kept Falun Gong practitioners on the edge of starvation. Even the jailers would say, "There's no human rights here." But the court judges would just shrug those complaints off and reply, "This judgment was not made by me, and I'm just following orders." In 2004, I was sent into Tianjin prison, where jailers chose special criminals to monitor us 24/7. These criminals are usually felons, such as murderers, robbers, and drug traffickers, and the jailers offer them a reduced prison term by harassing Falun Gong practitioners. If I even gave other practitioners a second glance, they would report it to the jailers. We were forced to labor outside, planting radishes, weeding, digging, or do factory work like wrapping candies, making paper muffin cups, or sports balls like volleyballs. While sewing those balls by hand, a practitioner pierced his eyeball with the iron crochet by accident because we didn't have any protective equipment. Even now, I can't eat those candies and muffins because now I know they were made through forced labor. Prisoners are punished cruelly if they cannot complete their work on time, including sleep and food deprivation, electric shock, and severe beating. We are modern-day slaves. But even despite these horrid conditions, the CCP sat in front of us proudly. Who is capable of knowing what happens in Chinese prisons? If any international groups come, what they can see is a beautiful prison. What they can hear is only praise. Thus, when you hear any good words from the Uyghurs in Xinjiang labor camp or any prisoners in Chinese prisons, please be aware that those fake words are just reflecting the brutal behavior of CCP. Only dictators need such lies to cover their crimes. I cannot list all the brutal things I saw and experienced in China here today, but I want to make it clear that the Chinese Communist Party is not just persecuting Falun Gong practitioners or Chinese people. All the democratic countries, especially the United States, have been on their agenda for many decades. Economic profit is just their lure. We have no other options but to wake up now. By the way, one of the wardens told me, "Tell your friends overseas, don't write letters to me again." And through the endless years of oppression under the party, I finally realized that they are afraid of something after all, voices of justice. So your voice really matters. Darkness is always afraid of being exposed to the light. Thank you.